Hello and welcome again to the Pittsburgh Steelers Show on your SteelerFury.com podcast. I'm your host, Bradshaw Ben, a.k.a. Will Massasak, also known as Accidental Zen on Twitter. And I am here to somehow rodeo these three, I was going to say clowns, that's not a very nice thing to say, to rodeo these three experts in Steelers football who are kind enough to join me on a weekly basis. First off, from Suburban Zone 22 in the Pittsburgh area, fresh off a coaching victory tonight by, I think it was 50 points. His name is Steel Perch. He's with us. How are you, sir?
Thoughtfully non-rhythmic.
Also with us from somewhere in South Carolina, the greater South Carolina area. He's our lovable curmudgeon. For such a young man, he's got such an old soul. His name is Dom. He goes by FC. He's here with us. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I have the like a clear your throat thing that in the era of the pandemic, you're like, is it just like something stuck in my throat or am I going to die? That's where I'm at. Also joining us, we got the full Monty tonight. Joining us from somewhere in Indiana, in the greater Indianapolis area. His name is Jeremy Coleman. You might know him as Smith is Smoking. But he's here with us. How are you, sir?
Doing great.
Excellent. Well, gents, we got two Steelers victories to talk about. And I think the good news is that they you could say they haven't peaked yet. It seems like there's a lot of stuff to work on and a little bit of a close call on Sunday considering the opponent. I'm going to start with UFC. You glass half empty or glass half full about the 26-21 victory over the Broncos on Sunday?
I guess I'll be glass half full because a win is a win is a win. 2-0. A lot of the mistakes I believe were mental errors and not necessarily schematics / being out physical. So mental errors you can clean up. I think there was probably as many positives as negatives as you could take out of the game, and they got the win, so that's all that really matters. Onwards to the Texans.
Yeah, right on. Perch, how about you? Were you underwhelmed with the margin of victory?
I'll echo FC a little bit there. It's just so hard to win in the NFL. You kind of watch the scores of the other games and you see some teams up big, and all of a sudden those leads all disappear and games get even, and some of those teams lose those leads. If you watch the Dallas game with Atlanta, that stuff happens. But, the Steelers so far played two pretty mediocre teams with mediocre defenses and pretty weak offenses, and they really haven't, which I don't know why we would expect them ever to, but haven't really put a team away. It's just not who they are. We've suffered through enough Steeler games to know that they just leave somebody hang around, and they never seem to have that killer instinct to just bury a team. So maybe once a year it happens, but it's just what we're cursed with.
Sure. Jeremy, the thing is, Steelers had two big leads, two touchdown leads with an opportunity to put the game away. And both times turned it over. One on a Ben pass, he kind of short-armed Juju, the classic ill-advised throw. And then the Benny Snell fumble, which was just like the worst possible time. The worst thing you can do in that situation when all you have to do is get a couple of first downs and the other team's going to fold. It's not like turnovers have been the thing that's cost them games, but they're sort of lucky that they haven't. I don't know. Any other takeaways from this?
Well, after that Snell fumble, he didn't give very many touches the rest of the game. You could definitely tell, once he committed the cardinal sin of not holding onto the ball, Tomlin and crew did not let him give very many touches after that. I think he had maybe 3 carries the rest of the game after that. And more of that was just to give James Conner a blow, not just, just to give him carries or anything. Honestly, I'm not really surprised, that we're 2-0. I thought we'd be 2-0 after, these two games. I will say I'm not surprised that we've kind of limped through the games at times, because honestly, Steelers under Mike Tomlin have not started off particularly fast in the past. So it doesn't surprise me that, we're not, revving on all engines yet, so to say. This team normally really picks it up towards the, end of October, November, December is when this team really starts to look like the well-oiled machine, like we've seen in the past. We're lucky we have such a great defense. They've been able to keep teams out. Thank you, Denver's right tackle, for not picking up the 4th and 1 edge blitz from Terrell Edmonds, because I think that was a total gift. It sure looked like they were going to go down and score to me. That was just kind of the feel of that game. I don't know what it is with Steelers.
You've seen that movie before. You've seen that movie before a couple times, yeah. Right,
and I just don't know what it is with Steelers playing backup quarterbacks. But it seems like they always play the game of their lives when they play the Steelers. You would think the Steelers would, once Jeff Driscoll comes trotting out, would be able to get after him. Their offense would go kaput. No, they only scored 17 points and made it a much closer game than we thought it was going to be towards the end of the game. So,
yeah. Perch, speaking of young offensive linemen, good and the bad, I felt like the Steelers got more than they could have expected to get out of Kevin Dotson and Chuks Okorafor making their first starts. Did you find that sort of impressive, or is that what you expected?
No, I think it was probably above expectation. It was you didn't see any pressures at all really from that side. You didn't see any mental mistakes or blown assignments. You had to think coming into that game, Denver was going to have to scheme and say, hey, they got 2 young guys who were backups starting next to each other on the right side of the line. Let's go at them. And there was no pressure at all. I thought, Dodson's supposed to be a big run blocker, and his pass blocking was, what really opened some eyes, I think, in that game.
Yeah, and FC, that's that guy Dotson's playing against is not a nobody, Jarrell Casey. I thought Dotson maybe had a play or two where he didn't quite get to his assignment from what I could see, but there were other plays where he was really dominating, and he kind of I thought he possibly ended the career of Josie Jewell on that Connor touchdown run because he bent him backwards in half, which cannot be a good feeling. What was your take on the young lineman?
Oh, I tweeted you, I believe, early in the first quarter, and I said, I can tell you right now he's a winner. His ability to re-anchor, I'm not a very big fan of Pro Football Focus, but they gave him the highest offensive lineman grade they've given in the last 3 years, to Dotson against, Denver. I mean, I don't think there was too much more that anybody could hope for. I mean, if that's what he's going to be, Steelers may be shuffling their offensive line again. The catcher's obviously getting his job back. I'm not saying otherwise, but maybe Dotson is somehow, some way works into the best 5 that we have. I thought Chuks was solid. I'll put it this way, I was far more concerned about Chuks than I was about Dotson. I think Dotson played against very high-level competition at Louisiana against SEC teams because Louisiana Monroe actually schedules beasts outside of the conference, outside the Sun Belt. They play Alabama at times. They play Clemson. They look and take on the big boys. And I believe they knocked off Iowa State the opening week of this NFL or college football season. So he played against a pretty good level of competition. When I seen that we got him as late as we did, I knew it was a steal. I really believed it. New Senior Bowl and COVID absolutely destroyed his draft stock. I thought he should have been a 2nd or 3rd round pick. He's a really good football player. Yeah,
mystery that guy did not go a lot earlier. And as far as other young guys, first I'll throw it back to you just quickly. Chase Claypool, I got to say, yes, it's impressive what he did, tracking the football on the deep ball and staying in bounds and showing you a little bit of what he can do. But the first couple of weeks, I got to say, that's sort of the little stuff that's impressed me a lot about him. A couple of blocks that he threw, staying in bounds on the running play against the Giants last week, and his play on special teams has been notably visible in terms, he had a tackle and some other contributions. More than we could have expected from a rookie, especially with no preseason and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we knew the physical skills were off the charts. you just worry about the mental, and what he showed through 2 weeks, the mental side's been, outstanding, better than what Antonio Brown would have done in similar situations, So, they just got to find more ways to get him on the field. And Juju with a bum knee this week, maybe that's a way to get him on the field some more snaps.
Yes, I didn't really Jeremy, what's the status with Juju? I didn't really hear. He didn't practice. Is that the scoop?
Yeah, he didn't practice today, so something with the knee. I guess we're going to find out. That would definitely open up Claypool for a lot more snaps because he would, kind of slide in outside and take up those snaps. I'm excited to see what he can bring. Like you just said, he's been doing the little things well, and then when he's had the ball thrown his way, he's made big plays. Made that great sideline catch in Week 1 versus the Giants, and then hauled in I think it was 86-yard touchdown versus Denver. So, limited sample size, but limited good results too.
Yeah. One last thing on the offense, FC. Ben has to have more. He has to have thrown more 80-yard passes to so many different receivers. Like, I cannot believe that somebody has thrown more to more guys an 80-yard touchdown pass. What'd you think of the look of the throw and his arm, because that gave us a little insight. One of the few deep balls he's thrown this year.
It was a great ball. His arm, I believe, is as strong as it's been in a while. The problem that he's having while playing no preseason and no real practices and missing a year is his technique is lazy at times. His normal Wednesday off this week, he actually worked quarterback drills. Matt Canada had him out there working quarterback drills, because I think Ben finally realizes that, that he needs his lower half and he needs to be technically sound to make good NFL throws. He just can't reach back and thunderbolt it out there anymore. And Juju Smith-Schuster's expected to practice tomorrow, so that means he'll be in line to start on Sunday. I play daily fantasy sports out crazily, so I actually pay attention to the injury report pretty strong now. He's expected to practice tomorrow.
Well, just so the rest of everybody knows, Dom has a head-up screen like the Google Glass that immediately updates any fantasy news. It just scrolls right in front of him all night long. In fact, wakes you up in the middle of the night if there's news, right, at 3 a.m.
I do not deny it. Ding, ding, ding. I have to hide my frickin' phone.
You would. Perch, let's move over to the other side of football. Feels like, all the talk before the season was, TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Minka Fitzpatrick. Funny thing happened. Some of the other guys that nobody talked about have had amazing starts to the season. Goes without saying, but Dupree, a little bit of a surprise, maybe how shot out of a cannon he's looked at times. But Mike Hilton and Tyson Alualu maybe played the best games of their career, both on Sunday. Is it just a matter of fact that they're role players who are surrounded by so much talent, or do you think they're feeling the moment?
I think Alualu's better than what people give him credit for. Hilton's kind of schemed into a good role. He's not making a lot of plays back in coverage. He's blitzing the quarterback and doing stuff near the line that you don't expect him. And teams are, struggling a little bit to pick up the coverages there. But Vince Williams never gets nearly enough credit either. I think he's just always been solid. And, I think he might be the hardest hitter on that team. Just whenever you see a big hit and somebody's head snap back, it's almost always 98, laying the wood on it. But, I don't want to blow too much smoke on the defense because through 2 weeks and two pretty mediocre quarterbacks, they've, leaked a lot. They've had some long drives and a lot of penalties on third downs, and the secondary doesn't look anywhere near as polished as it did last year.
No, not only that, Perch, you can say about with the quarterbacks what you want. I mean, Daniel Jones may be, a little better than mediocre, but the offensive lines for both Denver and the Giants were, definitely overmatched, and yet, they still managed to get some performance. But Jeremy, the thing is, Steelers only allowed 4.4 yards in offensive play. In a way, I feel like the game was closer because of the turnovers that the Steelers gave them than really what the defense did. They had one blown coverage on the touchdown, but I don't know. You feel like they underperformed against this offense? Or I mean, how did they end up with 21 points is kind of what I'd like to know. You watched the game, didn't feel like they would get that many points.
Yeah, I'd say it's a lot of it, a lot of it in football is just timing. And then I felt like there were points throughout the second game where it's like the timing wasn't there. So to me, I think a little bit of it is on communication. We saw that one touchdown go to Noah Fant across the middle. It seemed like no one was even around him, I can't remember who it was, but someone was like trailing good 4 or 5 yards behind him. I mean, it wasn't difficult throw to make. He was wide open. So I think just kind of like the offense, this defense is kind of going through some rust too, where they need to kind of get back to the level where we can expect them to play to. The front seven has played very good. They've been able to shut down the run for the most part. They've really been able to get after the passer. I think they have something like 11 or 12 sacks through two games or something like that. I'd love for that to continue to keep going, obviously. But I just think some of it's the communication. I just think they're still kind of out there, still kind of going through the motions a little bit, And there's been some young players that have seen time, like Alex Highsmith. He's been getting some limited snaps out there. You've seen Ola Adeni out there. I've liked what I've seen from both backup outside linebackers, which is something we haven't really been able to say in the past. But just overall, I think it's more of a communication issue. I think they're going to get it ironed out.
Yeah, I hope so. FC, I mean, it's kind of like we've entered the mixed bag stage of Terrell Edmunds. In other words, it isn't mostly bad. It's like it was like mostly bad, and then it was, well, he's been doing a job as a solid tackler, and he's keeping guys from getting big plays, and then it turned into, but now he's a liability on every pass play, blah blah blah. This week, made 2, 3, 4 really good plays, and completely blew his assignment on a touchdown from what it looked like.
Right.
I don't know where do you think it goes next with Terrell Edmunds?
I have no idea. He's one of 2 starters on the Steelers defense that sort of concerns me. I'm going to piggyback off of Smoke and purchase statements. Few interesting things. There's 11 players in the NFL so far this season with 3+ tackles for loss. And 4 of those 11 happen to be Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yep.
Tyson Alualu, T.J. Watt, and Mike Hilton, each with 3. And the NFL leader in tackles for loss with 7, one Vincenzo Williams. Surprisingly, Bud Dupree actually had 2 tackles for a loss in the first game and none against the Broncos, which I actually would have really guessed Bud Dupree would be one of the 4, but he was not.
Wait, hang on a second, though. Here's my problem with that. Bud Dupree tackled the quarterback and knocked the football out behind the line of scrimmage. How did he not get a tackle for the loss? That's all I want to say. Go ahead, Ed.
He's credited for a sack for the forced fumble, but not for the tackle for a loss because he got credited for the sack.
I see. Gotcha.
I don't like the scorekeeping that much as well. And to the communication, here's the crazy thing real quick about the Steelers. The Steelers rank first in the NFL in pressure rate at right under 46%. And they're also first in the NFL in blitz rate right around 58%. They are so far ahead of the next closest team in pressure rate, which is the Bills, which is at 32%. And like I said, the Steelers are at almost 58%. That's all good for the Steelers. The issues they've run into against the Giants, the Slayton touchdown, the Fant touchdown, has been communication. And surprisingly, it's been communication on non-blitz downs, where the Steelers also lead the NFL at 37% in NFL where they don't blitz their pressure rate, which is incredible considering the Steelers are considered a blitzing defense and blah, blah, blah. And yes, B2B, I have read your next generation stats, so I just wanted to let you know that I do pay attention to them as well.
Sure. But the Slayton one was a blitz, but the play against Fant wasn't.
And it wasn't considered a blitz because they didn't bring 5 or more. They didn't bring more than 5.
Oh, I think they did because I think they only had 4 guys in coverage. So
In your NFL Next Generation stats, you can shove up your bum.
well, the next gen stats, I don't know about that one. It's a Football Outsiders. That's the one that
Right.
that I dig. But anyway, yeah, it's point well taken. It's like, okay, it's early season, no exhibition games, not as much camp as normal. So yeah, I get the sort of some issues with communication. But Perch, I just want to say, I mean, I'm like, they played 2 teams that they feasted on the offensive line, and they have the leading pressure statistics. So they did what they were supposed to do. They dominated those teams at the line of scrimmage. I'm a little bit more concerned with, like, okay, Minka, clearly towards the end of last year, teams just completely started avoiding him wherever he was on the field. They didn't throw that way. They didn't give him opportunities. But I have the slightest sense early in this season that he is not really ramped up to where he was when he first got to the Steelers last year. Do you have any sense of that at all?
Well, absolutely. That's what his play says. I mean, maybe he just had a big chip on his shoulder because of how he was used in Miami, and he got a fresh start to come to Pittsburgh, and he was so pissed that they traded him. And, it was just a little fuel for his fire because as soon as he came here, he was just all over the place. But this year he's missed some tackles. He's been out of place a few times. He's had some penalties against him in coverage. He hasn't been anywhere near the same player. I think that they have been stressing, at least through the first 2 weeks, a little bit, the secondary, just because of the opponents they played, where they didn't have a lot of respect for the quarterback of the passing game, and they put those guys on some islands where Minka's playing single high, covering a lot of ground, and you've got some guys on the edge, manning people up, and it's putting a lot of pressure on those guys. And, all 3 of them have had some less than spectacular plays. I think this week they're going to have a healthy dose of respect for the passing game of the Texans, and you might see things tighten up back there a bit just because they're not fully selling out to stop the run.
Yeah, but FC, I guess I'd say, I mean, following up on what Perch just said, that once again they're going to face an offensive line that I think they lead the league in the pressures they've given up. So I wonder if they're still going to get into that situation where they're going to expect the ball to come out quickly and might get surprised for a big play or two. Let's start a little bit about this week's matchup with the Texans. I'd start with the Houston offense. FC, you mentioned a little bit earlier the Ron Earhart offense, and I feel like this Houston offense looks like straight out of that era. They have one of the most unimaginative offenses and play calling that I can remember in recent years, like the Steelers with backup quarterbacks last year. Are they just trying to protect for their offensive line and issues maybe with their receivers? What's going on there?
It looks real similar to some of the things they did at Penn State. I think that might be pretty much what Bill O'Brien wants to do. I'm not blasting on Penn State or anything, but I remember Bill O'Brien coached at Penn State now 7 or 8 years ago, and it's the game moves on. And you're right, that offense doesn't show much innovation or spark. I think that they have weapons, but they may be missing a few this week. Brandon Cooks would be quad injury if he plays or doesn't. It looks like they're leaning towards he may not play. That would be a huge loss for them because they really, I don't think that the Daniel Fells and Atkins at tight end are going to give. You have Will Fuller on the other side, who is just lightning in a bottle, but Deshaun Watson, you got to be concerned heading into this game. They have talent. Laramie Tunsil's a decent left tackle. Outside of that, I think that this is a game where Tuitt and Hayward and T.J. Watt could really, really stand out in the passing game. They're going to have to. Watson is an elusive quarterback. He can make plays despite Bill O'Brien, and that would be my biggest concern.
Yeah, I mean, I know that he can, but, man, he's made not that many of them so far this year. I just feel like the situation in front of him, has been a little bit desperate. He's been under siege, and Will Fuller looks like a different cat Jeremy, without his running mate, DeAndre Hopkins on the other side. Just feels like Fuller has been struggling with that jump up to the next step of being the number one receiver.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I mean, I think everyone knows that he's the most consistent big play threat they have. So they're, kind of doing the whole Bill Belichick thing. We're going to take away your big fancy deep toy, and we're going to make you beat us other ways. David Johnson, has had a nice little resurgence down in Houston. Despite the offensive line woes that Houston still has, he's had 2 decent weeks there. But FC and Perch kind of touched on it. Their offense is just so uncreative. Like I don't understand how Bill O'Brien, with so many like new toys and things, can be so vanilla with what they have, because that team has tons of speed. Will Fuller's a deep threat. Cooks is fast. What blows my mind is Randall Cobb has barely been used through 2 weeks, and they gave him like $12 million. It's like you paid the guy $12 million to make plays, and you're not throwing him the ball. That's not a recipe, for success. I'm struggling to think of the other. They've got Kenny Stills there, who is another speed guy. So it's like they have tons of speed all over the place, and then they can complement it with a do-it-all feature back at David Johnson. They even have some decent tight ends in Darren Fells, who is a towering 6'7", who 7 touchdowns last year in the red zone. And then Jordan Akins, the talented kid who came out of Central Florida a few years ago, he's a really decent move tight end. It's like they've got pieces for a successful offense, but this offense should be is it should be designed around Deshaun Watson. And it seems like Bill O'Brien is doing his damnedest not to do so.
Right.
In my opinion. He's got the talent to be a top 5 quarterback, but it's like they're holding him back almost. I just don't get it. You got to go, if you have a Ferrari, you got to drive it.
Yeah. I mean, Deshaun Watson, to his credit, to Bill O'Brien's credit with what they're doing, trying to keep it simple, it just feels like his decision-making under duress hasn't been as good this year as it was even last year. So for whatever reason, he doesn't feel like he has that bailout guy, to throw it up to Nuke. But I just wanted to piggyback on something you said there, which is about Darren Fells. In the offseason, Darren Fells was a free agent, and that was the guy that I thought the Steelers should try to make a move to sign as their number 2 tight end. Now, I'm not sure about the timing, if he was still a free agent when they had already signed Eric Ebron or not, or if better yet, if they had to decide to pick up the option for Vance McDonald before they would have been able to know they had Darren Fells. But let me put it to you this way. Darren Fells makes he signed a contract for like $3 million a year, and Vance McDonald is making $8-something million a year. I would rather have Darren Fells. He's a better fit for what the Steelers do, especially as their number 2 tight end. Darren Fells is a guy that, no matter what the talent is around him, they're all supposed to be, more high-paid, more talented offensive players. Seems like he makes a lot of plays for a guy that's known as a blocker. So I got to say I appreciate that about his game. Perch, just my first thought talking about this Houston's Texans team and thinking ahead to the other side of the football. It feels like it's going to be the Watt show, which may or may not work in the Steelers' favor, because the Houston right tackle is not exactly solid in pass protection, and you got Chuks Okorafor making his second start against a seemingly resurgent J.J. Watt. What do you feel like about those two matchups?
I just trust the Steelers' offensive line a hell of a lot more than I do the Texans. My concern is more, if you get Deshaun Watson flushed out of the pocket, that may be worse than keeping him in sometimes. The first 2 weeks he's been running for his life, and he's taken 8 sacks, and he's holding the ball long. But if you watch those games, a lot of the plays that he is making down the field are because somebody flushed him out of the pocket and he went off script, kind of like Ben, just more athletic. So it's a double-edged sword of, you might get a lot of pressure on him and you may give up a 60-yard pass because you flushed him out of the pocket, or he may take off and run for 20.
Sure, but Perch, just to follow up, it just doesn't – that that image of Deshaun Watson outside the pocket, escaping, making plays, that doesn't jibe with the guy that I saw last week. And I just wonder, like, if there's a little something under the surface there with not just the trading away Hopkins, but, with the plan and the coaches. Like, I just had this sense watching the body language and just how he's playing this year compared to how he played the last couple of years, that Deshaun Watson is not really comfortable with what's going on. Do you see any of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, his security blanket's gone. He lost a guy who might be the best receiver in the league and somebody he had a lot of rapport with, and his offensive line's not protecting him a lot, so he's under duress quite a bit. But, the amount of people who have missed sacks against him, he's been sacked 8 times. He probably should have been sacked 15.
Sure.
From watching those games, the offensive line's just getting chewed up. His guys aren't getting open. He's being flushed out. He's avoiding 2 and 3 sacks and then turning, nothing into something. So that's just, and the Steelers always seem to have a pretty good plan for, these more mobile quarterbacks and containing them in the pocket and all that. Just don't run past it and try and keep him under wraps. And when they get hands on him, they got to bring him down.
Sure. I mean, FC, I feel like it's a little bit of the plan they used against Lamar Jackson, where they're going to try to surround him to keep him from escaping and force him to make throws from the pocket with an offensive line that's not necessarily going to be able to protect him. You got a different plan?
It's not the same Deshaun Watson, maybe. I can give you 156 million reasons why it may not be the same Deshaun Watson.
Sure.
The Steelers have to game plan Deshaun Watson the same way they game plan Russell Wilson, Tim Tebow, Patrick Mahomes, a mobile quarterback. You're going to have to spy him. You're going to have to dedicate a player to keep him in the pocket and avoid killing you with his legs. That may be one less blitzer, and you have to contain him. You have to force him to make plays. You have to force him to make plays inside the pocket. I don't think that he can make enough plays in the pocket quickly enough. I expect more from the Steelers, from Tuitt and from Hayward, and I have a feeling they're going to be, on the come, to quote Mike Tomlin. I expect, that Bud Dupree and T.J. Watt, it seems like you know what you're going to get from them at this point. But that interior pass rush kills quarterbacks. It kills every quarterback from Johnny Unitas to Aaron Rodgers, to Tom Brady, to Terry Bradshaw. They can avoid stuff coming from the exterior. Pressure from the interior is death in the NFL and in football in general.
Sure. And you can't step into the throw, even if you do get it away, causing some problems. So Jeremy, I get the impression that, I don't know, you're too young maybe to remember. Was it? I don't think it was Patrick Waugh. I think it was Ken Dryden. I don't know. Might have been Patrick Waugh, the goaltender for the Canadians, who said that he would leave a hole for defenders to shoot at, and then as soon as they went to shoot the puck, he would take it away from them, and that was like a big part of his success plan. And I get the impression that maybe with Watson, that they will give him an escape route that has a dead end built into it. That seemed like the way that they have dealt with mobile quarterbacks in the past. You get your Bud Dupree running around the Horn of Africa that everybody hates so much, but it pushes him up into either T.J. Watt, or if he goes the other direction, into the interior pass rush. And if he manages to make it around all of that, going to his left, he's not as good throwing the football. Maybe somebody gets out to him, blah, blah, blah. Are you concerned with, it seems like their skills are so multiple. You're concerned with how they will choose to address Watson? I mean, I'm sort of babbling with ideas. You probably have something better in mind.
Well, I would think this would be a case where we're going to see Devin Bush spying Watson a lot. What I'd like to see is I'd like the Steelers try to get after Watson with 4 and then have Devin Bush spy him. Because Devin Bush has the speed to catch up to him. He ran, a 4 or 5 at the combine or something. He ran incredibly fast. I can't remember exactly what he ran. But, I would like to see my pass rushers get after him. And if he's just kind of sitting there waiting for like you said, kind of showing him a way out, and then have Devin Bush meet him there. I mean, that sounds like kind of a way I think the Steelers should attack. Honestly, because he's so mobile, I would not want to, bring 6-7 guys a lot, because if he gets past it, all of a sudden there's only 4 or 5 guys, that are looking to, tackle the quarterback who's moving downfield. He can definitely hurt you with his legs. So I'd try to keep him in the pocket as much as possible. Try to make that offensive line almost like a prison den. Make him just have to sit in there, where we know we have guys that can win their one-on-one matchups. That's what I'd be doing.
So FC, just skipping back for a second to, how Houston might attack the Steelers defense, being with all that in mind about their offensive line issues and the Steelers' ability to create pressures. Since there, has been a little leaky in the secondary, what are you looking for that are sort of, what you're expecting Houston to do, and what will the Steelers do to try to counter that?
Oh, you're probably not going to like this answer. Well, what I expect a lot is inside zone directly at Cameron Hayward and Devin Bush, where the Steelers are allowing 7.1 yards per carry. You're thinking, oh, that's ridiculous. Not with what the New York Giants did. The New York Giants actually did not get to get the ball off before Pettigrew was tackling them in the backfield, so that was actually not considered an interior run play. But watching what Denver did is they're going to run inside zone directly at Cameron Hayward and Devin Bush, where they had too much success. And they're going to play action, and they're going to look to get, Will Fuller, Kenny Stills, players, both tight ends vertically down the seam. They're going to run wheel routes to David Johnson because he is a very good receiver. Probably the back that I would compare him the most to would be Le'Veon Bell. He might be a poor man's version of Le'Veon Bell, or maybe very similar to Le'Veon Bell. However you want to take it, he is a physical back that has pass route running skills and pass catching skills. And they're going to look to make Terrell Edmonds make plays with his mind and not just with his body. They're going to put him in decision-making times. And he's shown over the last 2 weeks that he will blow coverages and he will make mental errors. Yeah. They're going to probably target Joe Hayden because Joe Hayden is not having a great start to the season. And they're going to pray that Deshaun Watson doesn't meet the rush.
Right. Yeah. Well, you gave a pretty good outline about what they'll try to do. So now I'll go to you, Perch. Will they be successful doing that?
Well, I think to a limited degree. I think the Steelers probably have the best defense that the Texans have faced so far. I think the Steelers are definitely going to be able to collapse the pocket and get a lot of pressure on Watson. It's just what we've seen the last couple of weeks. The Steelers defense dominates for stretches of the game, and then when things matter, they give up a 18-play drive for a touchdown or something like that. With a lot of third and 10, third and 12 conversions and just stupid penalties, they've got to cut that stuff out. So I think that the Texans are going to be able to get right around to that 20-point mark in the game, with the Steelers having a lot of success on defense, but a couple of failures here and there, and that's going to allow the Texans to score.
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed this, Jeremy, but I felt like the Steelers' defense was, for a little while there, just looked gassed. Not because they were necessarily on the field so much on Sunday, but just because they're still kind of ramping up to that, like playing full games. If you look at it like it was game 2 or 3 of the exhibition season, it feels like the defenses generally in the league were all a little bit dragging middle of the third quarter. I noticed that they try to get some fresh bodies in there for a little while, and then they came back stronger. But I don't know. You think maybe that's the issue with them being gassed, or to FC's point about the interior zone running, like that's what I'm ready to go off and running with. I noticed in the game multiple occasions where I say all three, Hayward, Tuitt, and what's the guy's name that they got from the Ravens? Wormley. All three of them getting absolutely pushed 20 yards downfield by double teams because of the inside zone I don't feel like that's something that happened regularly last year, and I just wonder if there's a connection between those two things. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Wormley because I was going to bring him up. When he came in the game, he was not very effective. So where I go back to it is last year, the Steelers could play 6 defensive linemen almost. You had Tuitt, Hargrave, and Hayward as your starters. Then you had Tyson Alalu coming in as your backup defensive end, Dan McCullers as your backup nose tackle, and then
Bugs.
Yeah, Bugs coming in as your 6th defensive lineman. So there's just one less proven body in that front, in that defensive line group. I definitely think that's hurting to begin the year. Like you said, I think you've seen it across the league, the lack of a structured offseason with, no OTAs, no mini camps, no preseason, a shorter training camp. These guys definitely are not in the same shape they would have been, and if they would have had all those events leading up to the season. I mean, I can't remember who I was watching. I think it was the first week. They ended up having to use 7 or 8 offensive linemen because they were all gassed. They couldn't all stay in the game. Gosh, it's killing me that I can't think of who that was. But, I mean, I think fatigue is going to be a huge part of that. Oh, it was during the Colts-Jacksonville game. It was that very first game. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars actually went through 2 or 3 players on the right side just to keep their guys fresh, So I definitely think fatigue and conditioning is a factor across the league, not just affecting the Steelers.
Yeah. Well, FC, just you want to follow up on your point about the interior zone runs? You feel like they're not gapping the way they're supposed to, or do you feel like getting physically overpowered? Like, should we be concerned about this going forward?
Yes, absolutely. It was one of the problems with this Steelers defense last year. We struggle to stop the run. We are not. Cameron Hayward's 285 pounds. He's a small interior defensive player. He gives 100% effort. It's not a matter of that. But if I believe your analysis was correct, where you would see, the 3 interior defensive linemen at times were getting doubled, where one of those inside linebackers has to make a play. Right. Devin Bush can't read wrong. Devin Bush can't get caught in the wash. Vince Williams can't read wrong, can't get caught in the wash. Terrell Edmonds got to fill the hole. Micah Fitzpatrick got to fill the hole. The outside linebackers, if you're, have a run. Every blitz is technically a run blitz. You blitz the run on the way to the passer. You can't bend it too far inside or outside TJ Watt, Bud Dupree. It's a team defense issue, but it's something – run defense is a team thing. And there's enough mental errors. The splash plays stand out for the Steelers. But the basics and the fundamentals, there is some issues on both the offense and defensive side of the ball that they got to get cleaned up, or they're not going to beat decent teams.
Yeah, well said. I'll give you the last word on that. We'll get back to talk about the Steelers and Houston Texans matchup in a minute. But first, it's time for our illustrious pick segment, brought to us by
Sports and Shit, your number one place for dog beds, anything you're looking for. Make sure you check them out. Sports and Shit. Dean Blandino, Mike Pereira, and we'll once again we're going to call out an announcing crew. Every NFL announcing crew for the NFL that I've listened to over the last week has been terrible. It is fucking awful to listen to these people speak about football. Bring back the crowds. I'm not trying to go anti-COVID here, but I don't need to hear artificial noise. And if I'm not going to, I just can't put up with the announcers. The end.
Angry at Cloud. Get off my lawn, kids. I don't know. The crowd noise could be good if it were a real crowd reacting to what's happening on the field. Right. But the way they got it going now, it's like a delayed. So like there's a big play or some big hit or something, and then a couple seconds later it's like. So
it sounds like they're like pumping in stuff from like REO Speedwagon 1979 to the crowd noise. You can just tell it's like so horrible.
It's the audience from taped before a live audience. It's like from All in the Family.
Exactly.
Anyway, Perch, I'm going to start with you. The Washington football team, a little hot and cold this year, playing at the Cleveland Browns. I mentioned it because I don't know, Washington's defense may be a little bit better than we expected and advertised, and they're getting 7 points in Cleveland. Cleveland hasn't really done anything except for running up against a pretty bad Cincinnati Bengals defense. What do you think about this matchup?
I think I'm going to take the Browns. They just have too much talent. There's too much talent on the defense, too many skill players in that offense. The offensive line's pretty good now, and they've got probably the best 1-2 punch at running back. So I don't think Washington's got enough to hang in that game. I think the Browns win by 10 points.
Jeremy, what's your take, bud?
Yeah, I'd take the Browns to cover by 7. As much as I love Washington's pass rushing group, with the new addition of Chase Young into the fold, they've got Allen, who came across from Alabama 2 years ago. I can't remember the name of the other edge rusher. I think it's Kerrigan is still in Washington. Yeah, Ryan Kerrigan. As good as they are, that offense still has to make plays. I don't think the Washington offense is quite there yet. Steeler Fury draft, website fan favorite Antonio Gibson. He's still trying to get it put together there a little bit. He's had some nice flashes through 2 weeks, but he's not quite ready to take on that number 1 role yet. I was very impressed with Cleveland last week. Their defense finally came to play a little bit. The offense finally looked like a well-oiled machine. I think that we're going to see more of the same in week 3. Sorry.
FC?
What's the point spread?
7.
I'll take the Washington Redskins in the 7. I'm going to base this off the opening week performance of the Washington football team.
You almost did it.
I actually originally did it. Sorry to any Native American fans by my comment. No, they played actually really well against the Eagles the first week. Now, I understand the Eagles didn't have a lot. It's just teams play for Ron Rivera. I don't understand it. And so I think the Browns are going to win. I think they're going to win by a field goal, maybe by 6 points. I'll take the the Washington football team in the 7.
I think it would not be outrageous if the Washington football team actually won this game. I think 7 points is way too many. When's the last time the Browns played a good defense and put up points against them? So yeah, I'm not really a big believer in Washington's offense, their ability to score points, but I think this might be a little bit of a low-scoring game, close game. So definitely, I'm going to take the 7 points. Just quickly, San Francisco 49ers at the Giants. There's one thing I wanted to note about this game, which I read. I believe it's true, that the West Coast teams traveling to the East Coast and East Coast teams traveling to the West Coast, on occasion previously, if they had 2 of those games in a row, they would stay for a week somewhere, so they didn't have to make that cross-country trip 4 times in the span of 7 days. But this year, they're not, because of the COVID restrictions, they're not allowed to do that. So my understanding, they gotta go back and forth a couple times. Perch, what's your take on this game? The Giants are a 4-point favorite in this game.
First, I'll start with a little story now that you bring that up. A few years ago, I was staying in Youngstown, Ohio with the entire 49ers organization. They stay in a hotel DeBartolo owned in Youngstown, Ohio. So just thought I'd throw that in. When they had a 2-week road trip, they stayed there for a week and practiced at a local facility and stuff. So my thought on that game is the Giants are trash. Barkley's done for the year. The Niners are banged up, but the Niners have more talent. So even with the cross-country road trip, I get the Niners winning by a touchdown. So Niners and the points.
FC?
I'll do the Niners and the points, despite Nick Mullins starting, Jared McKinnon being the only healthy back, it seems, on the 49ers offense. I just think that they'll find a way to win the game.
Jeremy, make me look good. Come on.
Yeah, I'm taking the Niners there too. They're a much better coach team. That offensive system of theirs can really be going. Honestly, they have a great offensive line. Plug and play running back. Jared McKinnon's a talented guy. Unfortunately, he had the injury. 2 years ago. Basically had to sit out a full 2 years. Looks pretty spry. He had a big touchdown run last week. Jeff Wilson, his backup, he's had some touches here and there, so he's not completely inexperienced. But let's not forget how impressive Nick Mullins was just a year or so ago. I mean, he had a great showing. I think he was on like a Monday night or Sunday night football where everyone was like, oh, 49ers without the Garoppolo, they're not going to be any good. And then who's this Nick Mullins kid? I think he's more than talented enough to facilitate that offense. I have no faith in the Giants right now with no Saquon Barkley. There's no running threat. There's absolutely no running threat. Wayne Gallman doesn't scare me. I couldn't even name you another running back on that roster. And Devonta Freeman does not count. They just signed him. So
okay. Well, here's where I'm going with this. I actually really like Nick Mullins, and yeah, he did play very well when he played when he filled in for Garoppolo previously. But I'm correct. They lost Bosa, right? That's the Bosa that's out for the year.
Yeah, he's gone. Yeah,
and they're also kind of banged up. And I can't get over this fact. They played in the same stadium on last Sunday, had to fly back home to San Francisco, and now have to come back to play at the exact same stadium.
Oh, yeah.
That has got to be like a psych out, right? So there's that element to it. And then the other thing is, I think the Giants were worse because they ran everything through Saquon Barkley. Like I think that was an issue for them that made their offense not quite as good as it could be. So I'm liking the idea of them throwing the ball a little bit more and using their run game to sort of offset that, and playing at home against a team that just had to travel across the country 3 times, and has their own injury problems. I'm picking the Giants to win outright. Gentlemen, game of the week other than our matchup, that would be the Kansas City Chiefs playing at the Baltimore Ravens on Monday Night Football next week. I'll start with UFC. What's your take on this game?
Wow. What's the point spread?
I have it as 3.5 for the Ravens. Ravens are getting 3.5.
It's the regular season, so wow.
Yeah, a loss for words. That might be a first for the show.
It's the half a point. You know what? I'm not laying. I'm gonna take the Chiefs and the points. It's just how can't you? The end. I mean, I'm not gonna bet against Mahomes. I'm just not going to do it. And Lamar Jackson I just don't trust him. I don't think he's great.
Sure. Jeremy, what's your take?
Well, FC said, I think I have way more trust in Mahomes coming out with a win than Lamar Jackson coming out with a win. We still have not seen Lamar Jackson step up big, in a big-time game and pass his team to a victory. Mahomes has done it countless times already. I definitely go with Chiefs here. I would never go against Patrick Mahomes.
Birch, weigh in.
The Ravens are head and shoulders better than every other team in the NFL. I think they added a lot to that defense this year. Calais Campbell. You got Humphrey and Peters on the back end. That makes passing against those guys tough. They really did a lot for the linebacker. Patrick Queen's playing pretty well already. L.J. Fort looks like a freaking superstar over there half the time. Derek Wolf's in there now. Last year they struggled to stop the run, and then they'd have to sell out, and they'd struggle against the pass. They've got probably the best 2 corners of any team in the league. Their defensive line's stronger now. Their offense is basically unstoppable. I don't see them losing more than 3 games all year, and they're probably easily the Super Bowl favorite right now. So I think the Ravens make a statement, win that game by, 8 or 9 points.
Thank you, Perch. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know about 8 or 9 points, but here's the thing. Kansas City has they're winning because they have an offense that can blitz you with tempo and a lot of different weapons to throw at you. But so does Baltimore. And then, they got a quarterback that can make some amazing plays and can be really a pain in the ass to stop. So does Baltimore. Maybe he's not as good as Patrick Mahomes, but he can still get you in multiple ways. And they got a kicker who is, Kansas City has a kicker that's unbelievable, made 4 58-yard field goals, with the game on the line. But So does Baltimore. So what I'm getting at is the thing that Kansas City's defense is okay. Like, they finally have a defense that's good enough to win because of the quarterback that they have and the offense that they have. But the Ravens' defense right now is so much better. And I think it's going to be a really good test for, if you have a good enough defense, can you slow down the Chiefs, especially coming off last week where they went into practice this week with like a chip on their shoulder about trying to come back this week and not do what they did against the Chargers, which is, kind of be slowed down for a little while. So, could be that they came out and like put a 40 burger on Baltimore, but I would perch. I think Baltimore's defense right now is the difference in this game, because all the other things are sort of a, even matchup. That brings us to our 5-star matchup. That would be your Pittsburgh Steelers hosting the Houston Texans, and Bill O'Brien coming back to Pennsylvania, where somehow he still has a lot of fans. I don't understand why. But let's talk about this week's results. Give us a prediction for what you think will happen. I'll start with you, Jeremy.
Well, I think the Steelers' offense is going to be able to move the ball on the Houston Texans' defense on the regular, and that's where I think Houston, vice versa, is going to struggle at times with the Steelers' defense, especially trying to pass the ball. We've got the best pass rush in the league. We've got some of the best pass rushers in the league to make it that much harder. I think the Steelers are going to probably win by a touchdown. I'm going to go 27-20. Kind of very similar to the games we've had so far. I think we'll give up some plays here and there, but I think Big Ben will find a way to get us the W.
Perch, what's your take?
I'll give you my take since you asked for it so nicely. The Steelers' run game has just been shit so far. It absolutely has been. They're at like 41 carries for like 2.9 yards per carry whenever you give them the Willie Parker treatment, which means take out the 3 long runs. So they've got 3 long runs that's like 110 yards. So they just haven't been able to consistently move the ball. Going into this game, all the announcers, everybody's going to be talking about the Watt show, TJ and JJ. I think we're going to get a heavy dose of Derek Watt. I think they're going to remove some of the tight ends from the passing game, guys who can't block very well, not to name any names. And they're going to put a fullback in, Eric Ebron, who got blown the hell up and killed 7 points off the board. But we'll leave that somewhere else. But I think the Texans are giving up 198 yards a game on the ground. Looking at the personnel matchups, I just don't think they can stop the Steelers. If the Steelers go in and say, "Screw you guys, we're pounding it down your throat and dare you to stop it." Now, granted, we have to hope our running backs don't get injured and don't fumble, because they're both are pretty prone to that. But I think it's going to be one of those 2 or 3 games a year where the Steelers look like the Jerome Bettis era Steelers, and they pound the ball and control the game that way and try and take the air out of the ball for Deshaun Watson. So I think the Steelers win. I don't know. We'll call it 24-20, but I think the ground game will be key.
Yeah, FC, how about you?
I will take the Pittsburgh Steelers to win this game 31-30. It's going to be a nail-biter. Yeah. I just don't have the greatest feeling about it. I do believe the Steelers are going to win. I actually agree with a lot of what Pert said. I think you're going to see a lot of Derek Watt, but I think you might see a lot of Derek Watt out of 3 wide receiver, 2 back sets, where we actually will have this tight end completely off the field. But at other times, the Steelers have a player on their team that's played against the Texans 3 times in his career, and he has 17 catches for 219 yards and 3 touchdowns. And that player is Eric Ebron, and I expect he's going to be a part of the passing game. I wouldn't be surprised if he actually has a real nice game. The Steelers seem to have a large number of weapons in the skilled position game. Unfortunately, we don't seem to have a feeling for the running backs position. I found it very, very interesting that over the last 2 days, one Anthony McFarland Jr. Took quite a few snaps in practice with the first team offense. You can see the pictures all over that magical interwebs. I don't know if it's BS, if they're trying to send a message to Benny Snell. Maybe the Connor had the day off and they were sending a message to Benny Snell about the fumbling issues. I have a feeling that Deshaun Watson's going to make some plays and that David Johnson's going to be successful running the ball. So hence my score of 31-30.
Great. I have mixed feelings about this. I'll start with, what my prediction is that the Steelers are going to win this game, and that they're going to win it, in about the 27-16, 27-17, we'll call it, neighborhood. So I don't think it's a super close game, but I still think you're going to be waiting for that clinching drive at the end of the game. But I could see it going either of the other two extremes as well. I could see it being a very close game where the outcome is definitely in doubt. I think if anything that doesn't happen to my prediction, that it's a Steelers winning by more. I do think you hit the nail on the head with Eric Ebron having a big career so far against Houston. It seems to me that the Texans are not very good at defending height and tight ends. They got some guys that are a little bit challenged in that respect. No offense to the height challenge people. But I feel like that could be a factor in this game. You got Chase Claypool, you got Eric Ebron, you got Vance McDonald. Some good stuff could happen there. And, yeah, to FC's point, it wouldn't shock me at all. I said actually during the game last week or immediately thereafter that I could even see Benny Snell, enough in the doghouse to be third in line to get snaps, in the game. I think he's on, they were praising him and supporting him with what he did in the offseason, and he came in to the season, earning that number 2 role. But, man, you fumble the football in a key situation like that on Sundays, you're not going to, you're going to have to re-earn the trust of your team. So it totally wouldn't surprise me to see Anthony McFarland gets his first snaps of the season this week, which would be great. Fabulous. So far, so good. I'll give you a last word, Jeremy. Throw one at me.
Well, to get a little off of the Steelers, I think a game we didn't touch on was Las Vegas going into New England. I've been very impressed with Cam Newton and his debut kind of in New England. At the same time, I was very impressed with the Raiders kind of beating up on the Saints the other night. I think that's going to be a real close game to watch this weekend as well.
There you go. Okay, Perch, how about you?
Win the game, go 3-0, 83% probability of making the playoffs this year. So big game, AFC game. You got to get it. Even if we come second to the Ravens in the division, this is possibly a playoff eliminator sort of a game. So let's bury the Texans while we get the chance.
Yes, sir. And FC, how about you, bud?
Well, we've got the SEC, Big 12, ACC, Big 10 finally going to be coming back, but there's going to be a lot of football played, and I think it's time to maybe have at least let the players' parents into the stadium, families, let it's Ben Roethlisberger could be his last year. His 2 oldest kids could actually maybe see him play a game, so it's maybe time to at least let the families inside the stadiums watch these kids play the game.
Hey, don't be making my heart skip by saying it's Ben Roethlisberger's last year, okay? I'm not ready for that yet.
Oh,
but yeah, I hear you. My last word is, with all the talk about, all 3 weeks I felt like the Steelers had they overmatched the opponent in terms of the Steelers front 7 and the opponent's offensive line, and so, I kind of expected them to win decisively all 3 of these games. But I'll tell you what, we're at the point, going forward where 1-point victories are totally fine with me. It'll just give us more to talk about on the show. As long as they win, baby, that's all that counts. And to that end, Jeremy Coleman, Steel Perch, Dom, FC down there in the South, and all of you for tuning in, everybody at Steeler Fury. Just want to say thank you for tuning in and supporting our sponsor, Sports and Shit, and all that stuff. And on behalf of all the guys and all the sites, I'm your host, Bradshaw Ben, a.k.a. Will Massasak and Accidental Zen, saying, go get 'em, Steelers.